Welcome to The Final Word. I'm really excited tonight that I have the opportunity to speak with a tremendous leader, minister, preacher, and activist in our community, none other than Pastor Charlie Dates. And Pastor Dates is the pastor of the Salem Baptist Church on the south side of Chicago, along with the Progressive Baptist Church. He's a graduate of the University of Illinois, along with Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. I'm so excited to have this conversation. He is preaching tonight for our Recovery Revival. Our Recovery Revival is sponsored by our drug and alcohol ministry here at Trinity United Church of Christ. We bring together different centers of where young people and also seasoned people are struggling with recovery. And we come together for worship. And tonight, our worship leader and preacher is none other than this incredible gift, Pastor Charlie Dates. Pastor Dates, welcome.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I feel like I should pay you a lot of money for all the kind things that you just said about me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's a delight to have you, and we appreciate you taking some time out just to have a discussion about your ministry and your journey.
Yeah. Before we go into it, I think whoever sees this or hears this should know of the tremendous affection and admiration that I have for you. And aside from the fact that you are my line brother, the jewel of our line right on the back, well before that, just the enormous intellect and compassionate heart that you carry for people of every walk, nation, tribe, and tongue is not lost on us. In fact, we just joking. I say this for the benefit of people watching. Even them shoes you got on, you come in and you sit next to Otis. True story. You feel like, hey, am I sitting next to W.B. Du Bois? I mean, so anyway, bless you, brother.
That's really kind of you, man. Thank you so very much.
Man, our honor.
Well, Charlie, and I'm going to call you Charlie because we're friends.
That's right.
We're friends now, so nobody get upset that is at Salem that I'm calling him by his first name, the name his mama gave him.
Right.
All right. But Brother Charlie, I've had this question that I've been wanting to know. When was the first moment that you heard the gospel, but it struck you?
Yeah. So my story is kind of like Timothy, when Paul writes to Timothy about the faith that dwelt in his mother and his grandmother now lives in him. Truth is, I do not remember a time in life where I did not believe. My earliest memories are twofold. One is kneeling on the side of my mother's bed with her when she would pray in the evening. And I did not know what she was doing or saying, but she would let me kneel there next to her. And I do think that I caught a kind of confidence in God as a boy, as a young boy. Coupled with that, I grew up not far from here. I went to church at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church. So Marcus Cosby's always talking about he went to Emmanuel 8301 South Damon. So I'm a dude. I went to the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, 1257 West 111th Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60643, when Dr. Donald Parson was pastor. And as a boy, I would sit in the broadcast service. So we had kids' church during the morning, so they didn't get to hear him in the morning, but our family would go back for broadcast. And we sat in the back right of the sanctuary. And there was something about when he got started that I stopped playing. Like, the other kids around would be playing. I'd be sitting on the edge of my seat, literally listening to what he had to say. And in a real sense, I think feeling enraptured, as it were, in the dynamism of the moment. Those are very real memories for me. And I remember an unction, that's probably the word, and an identification that what he was doing is what I was born to do. And I have never felt that to this day about anything else. This is not one of those kind of childhood psychology things where you're immersed in a culture or in a thing and you just no, I knew, as sure as my name is Charlie Dates, I knew that word that was being preached was real and it was effectual. So I felt the transformation, but I also felt the responsibility to carry it.
Now, you just connected a dot for me because you mentioned Dr. Parsons.
Yes.
Dr. Parsons, who is an amazing preacher,
Yeah.
narrative along with
Yes.
expository, but his use of language.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you utilize some of the elements and the residue of Dr. Parsons,
Oh
your use
yeah.
of language,
Yeah.
your narrative, but also your
Yeah.
expository elements
Yeah.
seem to echo some of Dr. Parsons.
Yeah, I would agree. And the way that I phrase it is he's more of an axiomatic expositor.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't the kind of rigid verse by verse,
Right.
concept by concept. He more so lifts a principle from the text and unpacks that idea,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is part of one of the riches of our Black preaching tradition is the ability to see the story in the story,
Mm-hmm.
to hear the line, so to speak, as you read the line of scripture. And so I try, but I mean, Donald Parson is, I mean, he's one of a kind, man.
He's
He
masterful.
can keep you for an hour and some change. And at that point, hold everybody's attention. And then he could dump that house.
Mm-hmm.
And he had so much sweetness in his voice, Otis. They said you get diabetes listening to him. It just was just a rich preaching tradition. Absolutely.
Now, you made a shift in your ministry and preaching. When was the moment where the gospel became, let me put it this way. When was the moment in your preaching where your Blackness and your faith merged as one?
Yeah. So, one of the things I think that's lesser known about me is that I was raised in a context where the two were never separated.
Mhm.
So I grew up at the first African-American Christian school built from the ground up in Chicago. And I grew up memorizing Dr. King's speeches. In fact, right now, I think I could still quote sections of his Nobel Prize speech, not to mention the mountaintop speech and so forth and so on. So they're the echoes of that in my mind. I also came to learn early on about Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and, of course, Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. So there is this stream that kind of runs through me in that way. And then, Pastor Parson was, he served at Operation Push, but he had the kind of ministry where he was boycotting radio stations that would not support us. Of course, they built the school for Black children, and the list goes on and on and on.
Now, Mount Calvary built the school.
Mount Calvary built the school.
Okay.
Mount Calvary built the school, yeah, for Black children. So I think in my mind, I never separated the two. When I went to college and then certainly in college, but more pronounced in seminary, did I start to discover exactly how unique my tradition was in contrast to the culture within which I found myself. So at the same time now, so I went to Mount Calvary, but I ended up graduating from Salem. So Pastor Meeks started a Christian school. Actually, it was a great segue for us. And anybody who knows his ministry knows that it is bent for the common man. It was specific to the poor and the struggling. And it was an ethos that said that the gospel had to address not just going to heaven, but how people lived in hell on earth. And so I saw that modeled in a real sense, the voting the neighborhood dry of the liquor stores, putting satellites. That church put a satellite in every prison in the state of Illinois at that time, to stream the services. Just so many things in reaching the hurting and the broken. And so when I got to seminary and I started to read some great stuff and to engage in conversation that never really crossed the line of how this gospel tears down injustice, stuff that I saw, how it builds up the poor and the marginalized, how it speaks to the broken, as Dr. Warnock puts it, not just the slavery of sin, but the sin of slavery. That those themes did not emerge in full. I got a little rebellious. And so I've heard this too about my preaching, and I wonder like what people hear, but I started this burden in my heart this fire burning in my bones, so to speak, got exposed. And so one of the seminal moments of this, so imagine, there's a flame there, but it hadn't like blown up, is the MLK 50 piece in 2018. So the Southern Baptist Convention which we were not a part of at that time, and the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, those are two, and the Gospel Coalition came together to celebrate King's life. Such ironic, oxymoronic stuff there. But anyway, I knew some of the people who were putting it on, and they knew me, but they did not invite me to be a part of that platform. What happened was the Memphis pastors, some white pastors actually, told the ERLC and the Gospel Coalition, you will not come to this city to honor King unless you work with the black pastors in this city to see to it that your work advances what they're already doing and doesn't. So when they do that, they have this meeting and they end up giving some keynote slots away. The first name I'm told that came up in terms of who the Memphis pastors were going to put up was mine. So I had this kind of familiarity with that community, but I don't think I had the credibility with them. And I'm speaking namely the white evangelical community. And so when I wrote that message for that conference, these are things that I've been preaching and thinking for a long time. But on that platform, at that occasion, it just kind of sent shockwaves. And I think it was a kind of coming of age moment, so to speak, for me to express what was already in there. I never drank the Kool-Aid. I never bought into it. I married a black woman, was only gonna marry a black woman. I'm sorry to say, I'll just say it the way I feel it. And I was gonna serve black people and am gonna serve black people till the day I die. If Paul got to serve the Gentiles, Charlie Dace can serve black people. I just, with all of the other opportunities and privileges, that's who I am. And I think I emerge out of, you talk about Donald Parson and the like, I emerge out of a tradition that held on to those convictions. I hope I answered your question. I know that was really long.
You did. And you also lifted up something that I want those who are listening to hear. One of your gifts is the ability to be able to speak truth, especially in and around social justice, in communities that are not used to it. And I remember when you gave that presentation, and I said, oh, Charlie just cut the people and they're saying thank you.
Lord have mercy.
And it was wonderful, the way in which you communicated the truth, but yet people were clamoring for more, even though you were afflicting everyone who was comfortable.
Oh my goodness.
It was beautiful in the manner in which you presented that. When did you become a griot and not just a preacher?
Oh man, I'm glad you think that. I tell you what, I don't know, Otis. I think that there comes a time, like the word became flesh, John 1:14. There comes a time when we who preach this word desire and long for a more tangible expression of its transformation. And I think that for me, hopefully some age and some experience has brought me to a point where some lights have gone off in my mind. And it's not mere propositional truth, but it's a responsibility I have to sit with our young, to share with our marginalized, and to organize to bring about the transformation of structures and systems so that people can flourish. And I think the answer to the question is when I've been given the opportunity. And I think some of our youngest, brightest, best people just haven't been given the opportunity. And I think the pastorate has given me that opportunity. The open door to publish and to write has done that, and time and maturity.
Now you're working on a new book.
Man, it's done.
Yeah. Oh, it's finished.
Well, it's not out, but
Okay.
it is the manuscript.
Okay.
It's called "What Hath Justice to Do with Righteousness." It's taken a long time to get here, but I am.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm excited. When will it be published? Do you have any?
Well, they say it takes a year.
Right.
So I think this time next year we should
Okay.
expect it. Going back and forth with the publisher,
Now, who's publishing?
InterVarsity Press.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And
And you will be doing a book talk, a book notes with me
yes,
when you
yes.
have the book published.
Listen, absolutely. And
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you one of the reasons why.
hmm
This book is not written to white evangelicals.
Okay.
It is for the whole church, and I don't want. So I talked to Charlemagne the God the other day about the Breakfast Club, and he's like, "Man, I want to put it out there. Is it out?" I said, "No, it's not out, but I need to be with you, and I need to be with other people who help get this message to a community that's broader than IVP. No shade on IVP, but that's broader than those spaces. So thank you already. Y'all hear that at IVP? The Otis Moss is gonna have me on to do a book review, and I want you, Lord willing, will read it before, so you can help me not get crucified.
I would be
once it comes out, because it's gonna anger people. It's gonna anger people, but I think that's part of our prophetic witness, right? It's not, you're not trying to like badger and bother people, but when people come in contact with the ideas, and my basic argument is this, is that in a world where good or justice is defined by the whim of the social milieu, we need a transcendent voice to define that. And there are a lot of people who argue for that transcendent voice. I'm just taking the original Masoretic text and the Greek text and essentially arguing that those words for justice and righteousness are sometimes used interchangeably and are sometimes used to interpret the other, which means that God is a God of justice. It doesn't matter what your biblical or theological construct is, you can't fight that. And one of the places we see it most clearly is on the cross. And therefore, from the Old Testament to the New, it affects how we deal with economics, how we treat the marginalized, how we treat women, how we treat the stranger, how we treat one another. And so that, oh Lord willing, be one of my contributions to the work of the church in the time in which we live.
Well, I look forward to seeing the publication.
Thank you, man.
We'll bless many. Now we're coming up on time.
Okay, I didn't did too much.
No. But I have, well, there's possibly two.
Okay.
But one question that I have: if there was a song, that would encapsulate who you are, or there was a band or an artist that encapsulates who you are, not just Pastor Charlie Dates, but just Charlie.
Yeah. It's hard, man, to pick one, but I would think Gregory Porter's is probably me. I think he got some of that from Phil Collins, but it's almost a love ballad to the resilience a person exhibits through struggle. When your belly is empty and the hunger's so real, you're too proud to beg, too dumb to steal. Just when you look around to see who's there, it's probably me. And so I think there, through some of the struggle in my life, God has granted me a window into the resilience he's built into the fabric of my own person.
And you pick a storyteller and a preacher of song.
Yes.
Gregory Porter. The second piece would be, what do you enjoy doing with Claire, little Charlie, and Kirsty? What is the most wonderful moment, if you were able to carve that out, that you enjoy doing with your family?
What we don't do enough, and that is walking after dinner. We live in the city, man, in a spot where we don't really get to do that. So when we get away and we eat, and I'm able to cook or grill or whatever, before it gets dark, we take a walk. And the walk has been transformative for me, because I remember, I try not to cry when I think about it, when they were small, and so they walk in front of us, and just to see them over the years kind of growing in stature and all of that. But it's also good because as they change, we change. And I think the dynamic in my mind of being able to have children, what a grace, and to see their transformation and development in conjunction with ours and our marriage even, It's absolutely beautiful. I will say though, as well, what I need to do is to bake more with Claire.
Mm.
So I bought a fancy mixer for, because she's been watching the Great British Bake Off, and she wants to make these pastries. And so, but to sit down and just get our hands dirty and that kind of thing is a real treat for me.
Walking with your family. So that's going to
Yeah.
be a sermon at some point.
Oh yes, sir.
Just walking.
Yeah, just
as
walking,
parents,
man.
walking behind your children.
Yep.
Beautiful. Well, Pastor Dates,
Thank you, sir.
Charlie,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us for the final word.
Oh, bless you, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for being with us for the final word. You can listen to the final word, of course, on all of our social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can check it out on our website. We are always producing material that will elevate you. I want to thank our media team who produced the final word, some amazing individuals who are behind the camera right now. I can see William Kilgore's head right now. Eric is over to the right. Valencia is being cool. She probably has on some sneakers. And of course, there's Reverend LaShonda over there trying not to laugh. But we really appreciate their production skill. And thank you again for being with us for the final word.